Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for 30 seconds of silent reflection.
Please sit down for today's announcements.
Hi, September 11th, 2001, I was teaching Spanish at Green Valley High School. It was my second year, and I remember my neighbor teacher coming over and telling me what had happened, and I didn't believe her. She was telling me the buildings collapsed. Just didn't believe her. I said I was in shock, I guess, and I just didn't believe that could happen. So it was before internet and those sorts of things, so I remember everybody was talking about it, and I remember looking at my board at the date, El 11 de Septiembre in Spanish, and just thinking I'm going to remember that forever. And I still remember looking at the date, September 11th. So when I got home, I remember watching all the news. My kids were little at the time, I think they were 4 and 2, or somewhere around there, and we just watched. They were super scared and nervous, and so it's just something that really hits home. I'd been there in the Twin Towers about 10 years before, and it was just surreal. So it's a tender memory, and it's something that's very sad, but it brought the country together in the end, and so that was one of the silver linings, kind of like the hurricane's doing right now in Texas. It's a very bad thing, but people are coming together to help each other out, which is beautiful.
On September 11th, 2001, I was sitting in a classroom learning how to be a teacher at Bass Elementary. Our instructor turned on the television and said, "Y'all, something's going on." And we saw on the news, we saw things that were happening in New York City. It was really crushing to us because all of us had our children at schools, and we were wondering, are our children safe? Are we safe? Our school that day went into lockdown, and we were forced to stay there for several hours before we could be released. A few days later, I took my kids to the airport, my own children. I took them to the airport to see the grounded planes because there were no planes flying in the United States. I'll never forget that day. It was really, it made me very scared, but it brought everybody together, and we all knew that we would be one united front. So that's my memory.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, it was just kind of obviously an ordinary day for me. I was 7 months pregnant with my first son at the time, and I was getting ready for work. And when I get ready for work, I don't listen to any news or anything. I just like it nice and quiet. So I actually didn't know anything was happening until I was on the way to work. And I taught at Durango High School at the time, and I was on the 215, which ended at Decatur back then. And I was at the stoplight at the 215 in Decatur, and I turned on the radio, and I heard Mark and Mercedes in the morning saying, "America's under attack. We're a victim of a terrorist attack. The 2 World Trade Center towers had been flown into," and I just sat there at that stoplight going, what? It just made no sense to me at all. And by the time I got to work, just a few minutes later, I was out in the parking lot, we were talking about it, and all I could think at the time was, wow, and I'm bringing a child into this world, and any kids I have after this point, they're gonna always know the war on terror, and that's where we're at. It was just a crazy day. We treated it like a regular day at work for the kids to make sure the kids stayed calm and weren't concerned about it. And it's just something that I just remember sitting on that corner of the intersection, just hearing that everything had been attacked. It was scary.
On 9/11, I was working in a bank, and the attacks happened about an hour after our bank branch opened. We didn't know anything had happened until a customer came in and told us to turn on the TV. It was very eerie, the response people had to the financial aspect of 9/11. New York Stock Exchange closed, and our bank actually ended up closing because a lot of people tried to come and close their accounts because they were afraid of what was happening financially in the world. So it was a very weird day. We ended up closing the branch and just sitting there watching TV and watching all the events unfold after.
On 9/11, I was living here in Las Vegas. I was teaching at Beatty Elementary School. I was teaching GATE at that time, and usually I get up in the morning, I turn on the TV at 6 o'clock in the morning, and first thing I saw, all of a sudden I see this fire on this tower in New York City. And you're kind of shocked, you're kind of half awake or whatever. And then all of a sudden you see that they're evacuating the building, and then within another minute, all of a sudden another tower, and we literally saw the plane flying into the tower. And it was kind of horrific kind of feeling, like you just sick to your stomach, and you just go, what's the matter? Is there a problem? Are these planes just off track or whatever? Is there? But all of a sudden, as you're watching it, and you couldn't get away from the TV because you're just kind of watching it, and all of a sudden you see the one tower start to collapse, and then about 30 minutes later the other tower collapsed, and you go, oh my gosh, there's so many people in those buildings. And then you hear about the Pentagon had been attacked, and a plane had flown into that. And then you hear about another plane crash shortly after that in Pennsylvania. And it's almost like you're in a fight and you're just like numb, and you're just getting sucker punched from all different directions. And I still had to go to work. I was teaching 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade kids at the time. And I loaded my 2 kids up in my car. They didn't really know anything about it. They were like 1st and 3rd grade, I think, at the time. And drove over to Beatty. And we had a meeting, and they told us, oh, be really careful about what you talk to the kids about or whatever. But as I started talking to them, these kids had already seen it. They already had seen everything on TV, and they were kind of shocked. And so during the early morning, all of a sudden, kids started being removed from class and brought home, whatever. And I think that kind of upset them even more than anything else. And then I got a phone call from my friend about noontime, just trying to get through the day or whatever. And he told me that half of the people in the casinos in Las Vegas, which is most of the people that work there, were laid off that day. They lost their jobs. So not only are these people dealing with loss of maybe relatives and people that they knew back in New York, but now they were having to deal with loss of jobs and maybe even having to move or whatever. It affected Las Vegas in so many ways, and even to this day it still sends chills throughout me.